The story begins with the maid running into her landlady's room and loudly announcing to her that Sir Elliot has arrived. It seems that the young lady did not expect such a notification at all and was having tea peacefully. The lady of the house is surprised that Lucius came without notice. However, the maid answered that the young man did not inform anyone because he was just passing by and decided to visit. Now, according to the servant, the guest has greeted the master of the house and is heading to the greenhouse. The lady ordered to convey the request to the sir to wait for her, because it is necessary to gather and prepare for the reception. However, the maid replied that Elliot asked to meet immediately, because he was very busy and had urgent business to attend to. Every minute counted. The girl was surprised by such impatience. Besides, the maid replied that Sir Elliot had asked all the servants and assistants to leave the greenhouse, as he intended to speak to the lady alone. The girl agreed that in that case, she would leave right now. It can be seen that the hostess was nervous. The maid asked if everything was okay, and is it worth taking the girl to the greenhouse? To which the lady replied that she would manage on her own, and the girl could rest for now. The servants in the house were already whispering about Sir Elliot's arrival. People were surprised by this visit, because everyone believed that this aristocrat would not even look at the duchy. After all, Sir Elliot was the emperor's savior. At the same time, the girls discussed the only possible reason for this visit: revenge against the ex. One of them said that she also would not miss the opportunity to take revenge. But another reminded about suspicions of organizing a riot. This is what the gossip has been talking about lately. The duchy was not going through its best days. And one of the envious neighbors spread a rumor that the duke was going to raise a rebellion against the lord. The young housewife's second fiancé disappeared recently under strange and unknown circumstances. Right now is a good chance to take revenge for all the insults to Sir Elliot, and most importantly, for treacherous betrayal and neglect. In addition, what the duchy had done 6 years ago was not included in any framework, but at least the situation between these two was at a normal level. But now everything has changed. There is nothing left of the past. It all backfired on the poor young lady. But she did not show her suffering in public. After all, she understood that no one actually wishes her good here. The same should be kept hidden. The mistress of the house entered the greenhouse. She came too early, and now she will have to wait for her guest. But curiosity was tearing her apart. What will this man say when they meet again? Will her ex remember the past and get attached to it? Is the purpose of his visit to mock her and the position in which she found herself at the moment? It is difficult to answer this question. Most likely, she will hear words of hatred and contempt addressed to her, and that is why I was preparing for a not very pleasant conversation. And then, what should be answered in such a case? The girl hesitated. Should I meet at all? Sir Elliot approached her slowly. Dead Race was confused. Although she had scrolled through this moment in her mind many times, she was now hesitant about how to respond and behave in relation to this young man. Elliot asked if the girl wanted to go for a walk. The situation was tense from the beginning. Both did not want to remember what they had in common: their past, their quarrels, unfinished conversations, and resentments. He knew it might be awkward, but inside he felt like they had something to say to each other. But Lucius was not going to be silent. He went for a walk with a purpose, but he asked about the banal. The girl replied that everything was fine after he left her. But over time, something terrible happened, and she did not want to talk about it. Suddenly, everything in life went downhill. The young man was surprised by the last words. All of a sudden, Elliot said he was guessing the reasons why things were so bad. The dark streak began with the death of Dedch's second fiancé. This is what knocked the girl off track and made her suffer. The poor woman replied that everyone around believed the bridegroom was dead, but the boy's body was never found. And Lucio said that it would be better if the body of his beloved was found. It would give peace of mind. It's hard to live with hopes that have nothing to do with life. It must have been very difficult for the girl when she heard the news about the death of her fiancé, and almost on the eve of the engagement. But Lucio sympathized. He believed that in any case the girl should have accepted this marriage. Anyway, everything has already been discussed with her father, and the parties met on a certain consensus. Both families were completely satisfied with the decision. Even before that, the girl knew that she had no right to refuse. But that didn't surprise her. And what's more, it didn't give that advantage to Elliot himself. The young man could not contain his pleasure at Dedch's reaction. Earlier, even before this meeting, the girl spoke in high tones with her father. She asked if the old man had already forgotten the fight he and Lucius had had 6 years ago, but the man did not pay attention. And Dichta was furious. She could not believe that the ex accepted this proposal after the bride's father had ruined the future son-in-law's reputation to the point that it was embarrassing for his relatives to face. The father explained that this happened in exchange for the forgiveness of the attempt to rebel against him. The emperor ordered to marry the best and most valuable of his knights, and therefore, if they want to live, they must obey. The question of their future survival now depended entirely on loyalty and obedience to the will of the emperor. From now on, his orders will be more important than the interests of the family itself and each individual. Dedchi still did not agree to such conditions. She believed that she would be able to explain a lot to His Majesty and get his forgiveness. The effort and the attempt will be much more important than the marriage. But her father thought that everything had already been decided for her. Besides, the emperor knew about the engagement between her and Elliot before they broke up. For her now, this marriage is truly humiliating and undesirable. But the background of her fiancé is not an important factor at the moment. It is much more important that this knight is a favorite of His Majesty and enjoys his patronage and praise. Elliot's status is now much greater and higher than that of many aristocrats and nobles who trace their lineage back to the founding of the empire. But the girl did not agree with this. She was not interested in status. It would be better for Diana to be the wife of some minor aristocrat, but not this knight. Her position in this regard remained steadfast. She did not want to endure this shame and embarrassment from her ex. The man replied that she would of course have to face certain troubles in the process of concluding a marriage, but it should be remembered that she is doing it all for the sake of her family. You don't need to fuss. That's the end of their conversation. They will not return to this question again. But Dedge tried with her last strength to beg her father. After all, the poor woman didn't even have the mental strength to look at Elliot. The old man ordered to forget about the past and the mistakes that happened then. Now the daughter had to behave as befits the successor of the ducal family, and Elliot was due to arrive at the estate soon to conclude the contract. And the task of Dedge is to make sure that the groom does not remember the past. Now the future of his entire family and the entire duchy is in the hands of his beloved daughter. She will have to pay for the sins of the family. The daughter is outraged by this. After all, the father was going to pay for the sins of the past with the fate of his child. The rebellion was raised by him, and she was to become a bargaining chip in this sense. But it's pointless to be indignant now. At the same time, Dedge replied that she does not really feel anything for her fiancé. But the father's will plays a decisive role in this regard. She is forced into this marriage, although she does not know how she will live on. But the imposed bridegroom replied that his will is also bound in this matter. Besides, marriage with her is quite a tempting idea. He already once had to bring this case almost to the end. Now it will be possible for sure. His Majesty wished to give a high title to Elliot for his faithful service. However, conservatives from among the nobles and aristocracy were against it. Also, this marriage is necessary for him in order to obtain the title. In other words, he needed a connection with a family that had ancient noble roots and belonged to the number of the most respected aristocrats of the state. But Diana had already guessed something like that. What surprised her now was how calm her fiancé was. For him, marriage was not worth anything at all. And besides, it was because of their family that the young man lost everything he had. They caused a lot of grief. And Lucius now acted as if none of that had happened. How can you be so calm in such a situation? But the boy also had one condition, and he is ready to express it at the end. The emperor wanted their marriage to be built on love, respect, and affection. Also, it is worth making an effort so that the picture is at least slightly similar to the wishes and orders of His Majesty. Diana did not understand. For her, the very formulation of this was strange and unacceptable. His Majesty did not want his subjects to think that for the sake of the title, his loyal vassal agreed to a wedding with a former bride. The young man explained that the ruler was well aware of their past. And that's why it's worth making people believe that after many years of separation, the couple met again and fell in love again. Feelings grew with new strength. In front of people, they had to play a role, as if love had rekindled between them and they were in love with each other again. But Diana did not agree with this. Many knew how they actually broke up. Besides, very little time has passed since her lover died. Everyone around is already whispering about her, and a wedding after such a short period of time will cast a shadow on her reputation. Lucius replied that a person's feelings are as free as the wind. Also, no one can blame their love after many years of separation. Besides, what about what the common people say about their rulers? He doesn't care at all. Let everyone around think that it bothered him so much that he decided to take advantage of the situation and lure his ex-fiancée. There was nothing wrong with him. They were not the first nor the last to fall into such a situation. And the fact that they loved each other very much was a well-known fact for all their acquaintances and subjects. And in this regard, there was nothing to be ashamed of either. The girl noticed that her former lover had not changed at all during these 6 years, but their feelings for each other have changed, and not for the better. For some reason, she was even disgusted to be near him. But Lucius now reminded the girl that she should work on her new image. There was no time for the imperial ball. It was there that he was going to tell and inform everyone about his wedding. And if she is as frightened and confused at this reception, will people believe that their love is real and their feelings are open and as intense as they were many years ago? There was a threat in the voice. And the last thing the couple talked about was that the girl had to take off the ring given to her by her ex-fiancé, who died. Diana thought about it for a long time, and she saw no other way out. The bride herself was confused. She could not even think that it was necessary to remove the wedding ring from the previous fiancé. It's good that Lucius reacted so calmly to it. Otherwise, it would not be sweet. The only thing that made me happy was that their meeting was not as scary as the girl of her time thought. And right now, it was supposed to end. Diana was glad that she would soon be rid of the company of Elliot Lucius. The conversation continued, but without bitterness. They understood that they had been through a lot, but now each of them stood at a new stage of life. The meeting was something that would allow them to say goodbye to the past and move on. Both of their faces softened. Both felt that these words reflected their own thoughts. Both of them changed, became more mature, and now it was easier for them to talk about the past without pain, with understanding. They both had a very good time. The girl remembered those times as one of the best in her short life. Lucius was not at all what he had become now that he had received His Majesty's patronage. Once their relationship was full of happy moments that remained vivid memories. They met by chance, but immediately felt a special connection that distinguished them from others. Each meeting brought them joy, as if they had found their person with whom they could share everything, from the deepest thoughts to simple everyday joys. Their meetings were always full of lightness and tenderness. Long separations always made both of them sad, but each meeting made life even more desirable. Dedge was very sad without her fiancé. The conversation filled their imaginations with vivid pictures. One of the happiest moments they shared was when they were just staying at home, having a quiet evening to themselves. In such moments, life seemed simple and harmonious. Diana woke up in a cold sweat. The girl realized that she had dreamed of the events of her past childhood, but it didn't make it much easier. After the breakup, she changed her life radically to the opposite. Dreams about their happy past and about the moment of parting have been dreamed very often lately. Perhaps the reason was the approaching day when Lucius would announce their marriage to everyone. It was confusing. She had to face a new reality. Family pressures and circumstances she couldn't avoid forced her to consider marrying the same man she once divorced. The Duke saw in marriage with his former son-in-law not only a convenient union, but also a way to preserve family life and stability and respect in society. And for her, this is a commitment and a difficult choice for her future. She was internally conflicted. Once they were together out of love, dreamed of the future, shared their innermost thoughts. But those times have passed, and now another man was standing in front of her. There was a knock on the door, and then the maid came in. Her name was Rosalind. The girl asked the lady if she slept well. However, after seeing the mistress tormented by terrible dreams, she changed her mind about doing it. The day of the engagement was approaching, and the heart of the bride was beating irregularly. The girl could not understand whether it was excitement about the future or the fear of returning to something that had already been broken. She thought about that moment. The servant asked if they should call a doctor because Diana was pale and had an exhausted look. The lady refused the doctor's services. Then the maid informed her that Sir Elliot had sent a letter to the bride. The girl did not expect this. After all, even in the days of love, her lover did not send her letters. But a lot has changed over the years. But now she was very interested in the content of the letter, so Diana sent a servant and began to read it. But judging by everything, the girl was not satisfied with what she read in the message. Her expression changed. She called the maid. The servant who came in was afraid of what she saw the mistress of. Diana crumpled the letter in her hands. She definitely wasn't going to do what the letter said. And the manner of writing the message made her very angry. Elliot himself already considered the girl to owe him something. A few days later, the imperial ball and reception in the palace were to take place. Guests slowly but gradually came to the ceremony. The building was filled with the voices of the people present. The ball was starting. One of the guests approached Sir Elliot. The man greeted the emperor's favorite, to which Lucius replied that he really did not belong in such a place. The aristocrat did not know how to answer these words of the knight. However, he again emphasizes that Sir Lucius is His Majesty's favorite. Also, he is the first among equals at this point, and has the right to speak with the flower of the nobility of the empire and the surrounding lands. The guest emphasized that without the presence of Lucius himself at the invited ball, this holiday would not have happened at all. The emperor himself and his beloved sister are due to arrive soon. What had never happened before in simplicity. The man conspiratorially turns to the knight and asks if he is aware that the daughter of Duke Ludin will visit the world today. Lucius pretends not to remember anything about it at all. But thanks for the praise. Everyone around whispered about the appearance of the Duke's daughter at the ball. People condemned her for visiting the ceremony because she had recently lost a loved one, and she had to observe mourning and all the appropriate ceremonies. The mourning that she should have observed after the death of her husband was not reflected either in her appearance or in her mood. She chose this evening not for grief, but for something else, for the beginning of a new life. When she entered the ballroom, all eyes instantly turned to her. Those present fell silent, and the atmosphere was filled with tension. The girl was disappointed by the hypocrisy of the ladies present and their husbands. In a letter received on the eve of the reception, her fiancé wrote that he wanted the girl to come to the ball in mourning clothes. She really didn't want to do that. However, now she even felt pleasure. Those who knew of her recent loss instantly began whispering. Deaf condemnation spread like a wave among the guests. Someone immediately turned away, not wanting to even look at such a girl's audacity. Others, on the contrary, could not take their eyes off the woman who openly violated the rules that were always strictly followed in their circle. The groom died a few months ago, and she is already at the ball, as if nothing had happened. Lucius himself was pleased with the effect. He smiled and tried to attract the bride's attention to him. Diana understood that the young man was glad that she had fulfilled his request regarding the outfit for the evening. The words of the girls present reached her ears, although no one dared to say it directly to her eyes. She felt every look, every whisper, but she didn't allow herself to show weakness. The girl walked confidently. The ladies and gentlemen around were talking about whom Sir Elliot was looking at with such delight. It was said around that the attention of the knight was captivated by Lady Bury Spot, a real beauty among all the worldly beau monde. Recently, there have been rumors about the romance between Lady Spot and Lucius Elliot. Most likely, the smiles of both testify to the truth of the rumors. There were no reasons for doubt. Bury Spot was from a noble family, and Sir Elliot impressed the whole empire with his own heroic deeds. But despite all his merits, the young man did not have an aristocratic origin, and his family was quite indirect for a nobleman. In the end, the knight could be saved by a wedding and a marriage with noble nobility. In this case, the exchange could be considered successful. After all, the family would have received an outstanding hero and favorite of the emperor. Diana paced the hall. She knew that her act shocked those present, but it was part of her plan. She wanted to show that she would no longer live by the rules imposed on her by society. Besides, her fiancé asked for it, and so he had a good reason for that. People around said that you need to stay away from this strange girl. The words did not affect Diana in the least. She understood that it was necessary to demonstrate to everyone around how she and Elliot were in love with each other. Then, everyone around will forget about the mourning that the young widow did not observe. That was the calculation. Approaching the center of the hall, she stopped near several acquaintances who greeted her with cold eyes. No one smiled at her or greeted her like before. The attitude towards others was disgusting. The young ladies in the corner of the hall were talking about Diana. This time they were interested in whom she chose for her new marriage. Who will become her next victim, and the unfortunate one who will join his fate with the cursed little girl. The girl advised one of the gossipers to avoid such topics and questions about it in public, to which the girl defiantly replied that if a lady does not marry twice in a row, then it is surprising who will be next. But usually in normal people, family and marriage are destroyed after the first marriage, and in this case, it didn't even reach him. The words were meant to offend Lady Diana. But Milady Crana was a very important public figure. Previously, everyone considered her the flower of aristocratic society. Not a single meeting was complete without her presence. Everyone enjoyed her company and companionship. But now a lot has changed. It was said around that the lady would soon go to the temple and become a novice there. After all, he often visits the holy monastery on weekends and devotes a lot of time to prayers and service. But the girls were interested in whether Lady Diana was going to completely leave secular society. After all, despite everything, there were still young gentlemen who wanted to marry her and join the influential ducal family. Although the Duke's family had lost the support of His Majesty, it was still famous, and his pedigree was one of the oldest and most noble representatives of the nobles of the empire since its foundation. And many were frankly afraid of her, and for good reason. Bad fame has overtaken her. One of Diana's suitors ruined his reputation. The other died in an unknown way. Until now, they are looking for the poor man's body, but no one knew for sure whether there were still brave people ready to invite the young lady to marriage. Is anyone ready to publicly confess their feelings for Diana or just send love letters? The girls went on to say that they were angry at the Duke's daughter's pride and contempt. Now she was definitely not in the same position as before, but she still cast contemptuous glances at those around her. But among this tense atmosphere, there were also those who did not condemn it. Several men and women who had always respected her strength and independence watched her with wonder and admiration for the girl. This evening, she realized that she was no longer afraid of judgment. Her life now belonged to her alone, and no one could dictate to her how she should live or grieve. She decided to live for herself, and it was a small victory. But the real surprise was that an old friend with whom Diana did not do the best came to her defense. Remembering the past, it was a shame in front of this blonde who was always ready to help her friends. The reason for the scandal with her and the quarrel that ruined the former relationship were Diana's feelings for the girl's brother. But she could not accept that the beauty was just playing with her brother's feelings and did not feel anything serious. That girl was not very wrong. Diana at that moment was more interested in the feelings of the boy and her own experiences and feelings. It was on this that her attention was completely focused. Nothing else mattered. Diana was more excited that everyone around was talking about her fiancé's secret affair with another girl. It was strange that he gave the ring to the Duke's daughter, and he spread such gossip on people. The stranger approached the bride. He invited her to dance. The girl definitely did not expect such an offer right now. Diana believed that it would be completely inappropriate now, but the young man insisted. The Duke's daughter stood silently by the wall, dressed in a loose morning dress that contrasted with the multicolored array of ball gowns. But this did not interest the young man. He persistently repeated the question. The man was sure of his resolve, but his heart sped up a little as he stopped next to the girl. Her appearance was restrained, but beautiful in its mournful simplicity. Diana replied that she was not against dancing, but because of this, bad gossip about Lucios can spread. She was surprised by what the emperor's favorite wanted to achieve with such strange behavior. But everything was already decided. The stranger replied that he did not care what rumors would circulate about his person, but the order of His Majesty should definitely not be violated. The man was not going to give up on the prospects of his plan. The knight advised to look around, but so that the girl would not draw attention to herself. Diana thus found Sir Elliot conversing with some of the aristocrats. who were evidently glad of his company. The Duke's daughter guessed that this young man had been sent to her by Lucius. The stranger confirmed that he had been sent by Sir Eliot. Also, you shouldn't anger Lucius and make him nervous and anxious. The young man said that today the knight said a phrase, the meaning of which was that a girl should not even do something to spoil her reputation, and that of her future bridegroom. These words offended her. That's why Diana got angry. She suddenly stopped dancing and abruptly walked away from the stranger. He tried to call her because he was afraid that in this way, he would destroy the plan of Sir Eliot, his boss. The young man grabbed Lady Diana's hand. He asked her to wait a minute and not to do anything stupid under a hot hand. Everything around seemed to be quiet, and all attention was focused on the unfamiliar young man and Diana. A whisper ran through the crowd. Many of the girls invited to the ball could not understand why all the men and boys were so attracted to this girl. After all, she could not impress with anything outstanding now. Diana, struck by the impudence of her dance partner, was about to tell him a lot of unpleasant things, but the young man stopped her. He did not want to insult or abuse her, but simply asked her to obey. With a quick movement, almost imperceptible to the average person, the stranger handed the girl a note. He asked to read the message somewhere in a deserted place in the near future, so as not to delay. Evil tongues have been gossiping all this time about the fact that there are still people who want to marry a girl, although her family tarnished its honor by preparing a rebellion against the emperor. No one was sure that there were still brave people who would try to connect their hearts with this girl, and even more so is to publicly confess your feelings for her. Diana was looking at the piece of paper that the stranger had given her. The girl thought that these were really hard times for the knee, if even the simple servants of the knights dared to flirt with her and invite her to dance. The girl looked up, a little surprised by his request. You could see a shadow of sadness in her eyes, and a slight smile with a hint of doubt on her face. However, curiosity got the better of her. The young man, without changing his facial expression for a moment, leaned even closer, respectfully keeping his distance. He respectfully advised not to forget that life goes on even in the most difficult situations. But suddenly, Diana's expression turned angry. It was as if a demon had taken up residence in her. The stranger became very unpleasant. He was afraid of what would happen next. But the anger of the Duke's daughter was already burning with hellish fire. Eliot's servant looked at her in shock. He asked why she did that with that letter. After all, the boy gave her clear instructions about this. The girl thought that this letter was actually from a servant. The young man replied that Sir Eliot had advised him to invite Lady Diana to the dance, and had already delivered a note from the knight there. And in no way did he want to offend or anger the girl. In addition, Eliot's future wife. The stranger was crying. He did not know what he would answer his master now. The girl tore up the note, and now Sir Lucius's errand will remain unfulfilled. But Diana asked not to panic and not to be afraid. Already at home, Lucius was laughing at the servant. But he laughed for a good reason. Eliot expected it to be. After all, his ex was very serious and did not like it when she was bothered for nothing. Diana stood by. She was silent and listened to her future husband. For her, the situation was not so critical, and ready to be funny. But Lucius was amused by the situation when the servant came in tears. But Diana wondered why Eliot himself did not dare to give her an invitation in a note. Secret machinations annoyed him very much. Lately, he somehow wanted to laugh at her. From the very beginning, the situation regarding wearing funeral mourning clothes for a reception in the imperial palace is strange. And finally, this servant is a spy with stupid proposals. Lucius began to annoy her with his attitude towards her. Although it was a simple arrangement, Lady Diana did not want to be transformed into an obedient doll for comfort and use after this. Now came the moment when Diana asked to explain her fiancé's secret plan to her, but he just looked at her in surprise after that. After all, it was already on the verge of some kind of persecution or mania. Lucius looked at his bride. He explained that, of course, he had no secret grudge against the girl. He didn't try to mock her or vilify her. They just need to play a part. The role was to convince everyone of his feelings and hidden love, and therefore they will stand on this terrace for a while and return to everyone. Let the nobles and aristocrats talk and whisper. Diana asked why she wore that morning dress then. Why should she play a role at all? Because both have nothing to lose, and what is happening between them can be openly shown to everyone. Elliot objected. He replied that he did it for her own good. And in order for her to understand him correctly, you can't expose yourself to an open attack. After all, then the reputation will definitely be ruined, and the future is destroyed. The girl was already quite grown up, so she should have guessed that everyone around her was throwing mud at her and spreading gossip behind her back. And local gossip girls and men had plenty of reasons for this. If Diana had come to the party dressed festively, then everyone would have talked about the fact that after the death of the groom, she started playing with him again. The condemnation of society would begin to spread to the point that even the emperor would pay attention. The most effective way to avoid this was to maintain at least some semblance of respect for custom and order. And she still needs to wear that cursed ring that her fiancé recently gave her. But at the same time, Elliot would just be thrown out if he saw that jewelry on her. The morning dress remained the same dark, but now it had a special meaning, especially for the people present. Lady Diana looked at her husband. She made sure again that he had a boneless tongue. However, the words made no sense at all. After all, they both pursued their goals. Their eyes met in the room where everything was already decided. Once they were in love, so passionately, so youthfully naive when it seemed that the whole world revolved around them. But over time, everything changed. The guy laughed. He asked to forgive him because he spent 6 years at the front, and this leaves its mark on the psyche of people. But he was pleased that the bride had not changed at all, only became a little boring. They stood side by side, but felt a distance greater than ever before. There was a cold calculation in his eyes, an alienation that was hard not to notice. He no longer saw her as the girl she once was. Suddenly, Elliot said that all this happened because of a planned marriage with a moralist. It was the ex-fiancé who died who corrupted Lady Diana so much. Over time, she became like him, adopted something. The Duke's daughter also knew that he did not have the boy with whom she once dreamed of a life together. But now they were united not by passion, not by love, but by pure profit. Suddenly, Diana revealed that the marriage with Frio was also planned. She had no feelings for him. However, she did not dare to speak badly about him because he did not die just like that. They decided to marry because it was right from the point of view of the mind, not the heart. It was a decision dictated by circumstances, joint business, family ties, or the desire to ensure a comfortable future. Both thought about the deal, about the benefit, about how their union would become a solid foundation for achieving their goals. She, although she understood the practicality of this step, felt bitterness in her heart. The lady was afraid that she dared to talk about Fred with the future bridegroom. She never wanted to anger me. But in some ways, all this seemed like a betrayal of oneself and the forgetting of former dreams about the future. It was difficult to talk about feelings. They were disguised under a layer of indifference and profit. Their words sounded formal, almost like a business deal. But despite this, the past remained somewhere in the depths. Unexpectedly for himself, Sir Lucius begged to be excused for his unbecoming behavior. This surprised the girl even more. She was not strong enough to return the former love and feelings. But memories did not give peace all this time. In addition, the bridegroom made a mixed impression. Their hearts had long since stopped beating in unison, but that didn't matter. It was not about romance. Marriage will be a union not of souls, but of interests. And yet, from time to time, in moments of silence, when everything was already decided, a silent question appeared. Could they find in each other again what they once lost? But now she thought that the young man would start shouting and mocking. Perhaps the groom was in a very good mood today. Deep awareness of the present did not give peace to the poor thing. Lucius asked if his fiancée had feelings for him now. The girl did not know how to answer such a question. He looked at her and saw a former lover, but also felt a cold calculation. Elliot asked if she had ever been as protective of him as she had just been of Fred. Her eyes, once so bright and full of life, now reflected a mixture of indifference and acceptance. Then they were silent. Lucius broke the silence. He started from the moment when a girl left him alone 6 years ago. Both knew perfectly well that they no longer felt what had once burned between them. Both felt emptiness. The morning has come. The girl was sitting at the table. She looked in surprise at her interlocutor, who was talking about the fact that Bella Annis was present at the ball. This person has not been seen in the world for a long time. The interlocutor replied that this person was currently in the duchy, and beware of this girl. After all, bad fame followed her. Bella wasn't averse to spreading lies and gossip about people she didn't like. One day, this Bella Annis rushed to Lady Diana saying that she wanted to meet Lucius herself, and his bride herself is not worthy to be with him. The woman's words were cruel. The security did not miss the tantrum that time. Bella was more like an old witch and didn't want to obey the commands of men. Mom also realized that the woman was not full of reason from the beginning, but now it definitely seemed that the girl wanted to gain the trust of the Duke in order to be closer to Lucius, whom she so wanted to possess. It is necessary to drive her away from the estate as soon as possible. Diana agreed that this person would not have dared to come here just like that. Bella was self-confident, charismatic, and, without a doubt, masterful in the art of manipulation. In Hasto, this woman lost almost everything. The Duke's carriage seemed to accidentally hit her, and the old Duke understood that he was to blame for this situation, invited the guest to his estate so that she could rest and heal. Dixie assured that nothing terrible was supposed to happen. After all, a woman does not have so much shame to nurse various bad things in the house of her recent patron. Nevertheless, she wanted to win the bridegroom away from the girl. This desire was fueled not only by admiration, but also by a sense of one's own superiority. She did not believe in fair games and open feelings. For her, the main tool was gossip, poisonous words that destroyed trust. But you should still not think that with such a biased attitude, they somehow insult her. A stupid premonition did not leave the girls. They could not believe that this lady would behave normally. Dixie asked to keep Lucius away from this woman at all costs. She always acted quietly and cautiously, never showing true intentions. Under the mask of good advice was hidden deep envy. Her goal was to sow doubts in the girl's heart and make her doubt the fidelity of her lover. Also, the bridegroom's sister offered to swear to both that they would protect the young man from the encroachments of evil. Lady Diana never doubted her lover. If something really happened, the girl would be the first to know from him. There was an atmosphere of trust and deep love between them. In addition, the Duke himself does not approve of his daughter's relationship with the young man. He believes that nothing good will definitely come out of this. But now a guess flashed in my head. The invitation could be special. In the boys' room, which served as his office, the girl noticed a woman. It was she. Bella and the old Duke were seriously discussing something and gesticulating actively. It seems that they agreed on something. Her every move, every word was thought out. Anise never rushed events, knowing that gossip works as a slow but effective weapon. She enjoyed the process, feeling herself gradually getting closer to her goal. The father was satisfied with what the guest told him, but Diana did not dare to tell him about anything. After all, she did not want to anger her father, who did not have a good character anyway. She silently passed by. Everything was supposed to be fine. After all, the father did not order to send for her right now. The same question was definitely not supposed to concern her fate and future. It is hard to imagine what would have happened to her if she had dared to contradict the Duke. That's how the girl thought until one moment. It was on that day that Mrs. Annis proceeded to implement her cunning plan. In her eyes, it was a game she was always one step ahead of. It happened 6 years ago. Neither guilt nor the possibility of ruining someone's happiness stopped her. She acted coolly and cautiously as she watched the bride grow more and more insecure. But this time, Diana's father became the target. Lady Luyden and her fiancé Fred Fenry were a very handsome couple. Everyone around was delighted with how lucky the lovers were to find each other. Many were interested in how the lovers met. They were the couple that everyone looked up to. The lady and her groom always appeared together, radiating a harmony that amazed everyone who watched them. And the gossipers did not calm down. Many of them were very jealous of the young, and some even tried to make Diana and Fred quarrel. Madame Anise ran up to the young man and grabbed him with a pleading look. A request froze on her lips. Diana was shocked by this behavior, and the lady did not waste her time in vain. With tears in her eyes, she said that she was very happy about this meeting, because she had been waiting for it for a long time, and finally they did meet. But then it was even more interesting. Anise said she was Fred's mother, and she asked to forgive her for the fact that she had not come to him for a long time. With these words, she shocked Diana and her fiancé. After all, no one knew about it. That woman sobbed and fought hysterically. Fred leaned over her, unsure of how to react to this. He couldn't understand why this woman was calling him her son. The question remained unanswered. Anise is hysterical, but it was already late. Maids, gossipers who saw all this, could not believe in the truth of the scene. But that didn't stop them from spreading the rumor that Fred's mother was a countess, although perhaps she found out. The lady was crying. She pretended that the pain was tearing her soul. However, the young man did not want to believe. Anise said that he was still very young then and would not be able to remember those years. But now the name Bella Anise had something to say to him. The woman assured that at one time she belonged to the noble Hasto family. And one day, fate brought her together with a sailor, an officer who took advantage of her naivety and youth. Strong feelings flared up between them. The man promised to marry her, and Anise believed. After that, she gave birth to a child for her lover. But later, it turned out that her current husband and father of the child already had one family in Ellen. 6 years later, the former lover asked to give the child to him, because his own wife could not conceive and give birth. And the man even tried to exchange all his wealth for his son from another. And Anice's own family threw her out the door after she gave birth to an unknown person out of wedlock. And therefore, in desperation, she agreed to her husband's proposal to exchange wealth for a child. At first, the former lover sent portraits of the little one so that the woman could at least see her son on them. But after some time, the connection with the husband was cut off, and there were no more messages from him. His plan was to take the little one away forever, and so that he would not guess who his real mother was. And for the sake of Fred's well-being, she endured all this time and did not dare to reveal the truth. But right now, before her death, she decided to see her son at least for the last time. There was silence around. Everyone listened attentively to what Lady Bella Anise was talking about with her newly born son. One of the court ladies approached Madame Anna and asked her to stop this masquerade, because she openly lies. After all, Count Fenry was not the kind of person who was capable of deceiving women and taking advantage of them. But Bella Anise was not lost. She held out an open locket in her palm, inside which was a small portrait of a 6-year-old boy. This is what little Fred should have been after his father took him. The woman confirmed the guess of those present. She said that this is exactly the portrait she was talking about. Everyone around could not believe it, but really the little one was exactly a copy of the Count in his youth. Fred himself thought that the Earl had served not far from Hasto before receiving his title, and in fact, he held the rank of a high-ranking naval officer. Madame Anise was from the same places where she spent her youth. Diana looked at her lover. She began to guess that Lucius was the Earl's illegitimate heir, and therefore their wedding cannot take place because the groom is a bastard. The girl thought that she needed to gather her strength and calm her emotions. In fact, you should ask your father for help. It was he who could clarify the situation. The poor girl ran to her father. The man listened carefully to his daughter. He smiled mysteriously. And when the girl fell silent, he replied that he was ready to help her in any case. But in fact, the Duke treated. He did not think that everything would turn out like this. And then Diana understood. Father himself was against the marriage with Lucius. It was he who suggested Madame Anise from Hatso to play the necessary role to discredit the boy, and YGM almost managed to do this. The father of the bride was never a supporter of her choice. He didn't like something about the bridegroom from the beginning, maybe his background, his lifestyle, or simply that he didn't fit into the perfect picture. Diana looked intently at her fiancé and asked him to tell the truth. The young man asked not to think anything bad about him. After all, everything that the woman talked about still needs to be checked with the Count himself. But the problem was that the Count himself was now seriously ill and could not even speak. There was no talk of receiving guests at all. Gossip began to spread among friends and family acquaintances. It was at this point that Lady Diana lost consciousness. Lucius's last words were the explanation that he had not actually been to the county until 6 years of age. But in no way was this strange woman his mother. But it was too late to say anything. The Duke and Lady Anise convinced everyone that the young man was her son. The father purposefully tried to find any possible weaknesses in the groom's reputation. He questioned old acquaintances, tried to find out details about his past. If he couldn't find out something concrete, he created the appearance of saying that there really is no smoke without fire. And after a certain period of time, the case of Lucios even reached the court. After which, by the decision of the judge and the jury, it was decided to deprive Lucios of the title of heir to the count and to give up the surname of Fenri. After the boy lost everything, he was forcibly mobilized and sent to war. The old duke hoped in this way to put an end to the disobedient bridegroom so that he would not even dare to think. And right now, Lucius was asking Diana if she was ready to protect him like that from everyone who began to judge him. After all, she only protected Fred from suspicions and bad words. But now he asked not to answer anything. After all, 6 years have passed since that moment, and the girl never once mentioned him, and did not even write a single letter, at least out of politeness. The girl remembered how, during the trial, Lucios did visit her once. He was serious and offered his beloved to run away with him from the whole world and live happily. But their verbal duel did not lead to anything good. Diana asked him to get away and not try to deceive her again and take advantage of her gullibility. The young man's heart was completely and irrevocably broken. Now the boy has completely changed. Not a trace of his former self remained. Lucios asked if the girl practiced mime. She replied that she did not have time. The answer was not satisfactory because Diana was supposed to cry today. Lucios confirmed his words. The girl had to run away from the terrace in tears, but before that, you should fix her hair. Memories of those happy moments together rushed to Diana from the touch of her former lover. The lady had a sophisticated elegance that was impressive with its simplicity and impeccable taste. She was always perfect, exquisite clothes, natural grace in every movement. Her smile charmed everyone around. The groom was also admired. Tall, stately, he had a special charm, courageous, but not arrogant. His calmness and self-confidence created a sense of reliability. He was a true gentleman. But his voice tore him from his memories. The boy tousled Diana's hair and was pleased with the effect he achieved. He thought everything was perfect now, and it was time to return to the main hall. Lucios ordered to run across the hall, pretending that the girl was wiping away her tears. After that, she should get into the carriage and pretend that she is trying to go home from here as quickly as possible. He was sure that she would succeed. The girl was surprised by how unmoved her beloved remained. He was simply carved out of stone. No emotions, only a bare calculation and rational analysis of thoughts of everything that was about to happen. The conversation between them was quiet but intense. Every word he said hurt her deeper. She felt a wave of emotion rise up inside her. Her eyes filled with tears and her voice shook. He seemed oblivious to her condition, or unwilling to notice it, as he continued to speak his cold and indifferent words. Everything she had tried so hard to keep under control throughout the evening broke in an instant. She couldn't take it anymore. Tears began to roll down her cheeks, and without stopping, she turned sharply and ran across the hall. Her heart was beating so hard she thought everyone in the room could hear it. The guests began to look around, noticing her rapid movement and tearful face. But the girl did not pay attention to their views. She did not care who would think what. There was only one desire in his head: to escape as soon as possible. Many noticed that changes in the girl's mood occurred after she ran away from the terrace, where she had a conversation with her ex-lover. Someone tried to call and calm Diana down, but she was running away from that hall. Now everything seemed foreign, unnecessary, so far from her true feelings. Her legs moved forward quickly, and her tears blurred the picture in front of her eyes. Some started talking about new relationships. Meanwhile, Lucios was carefully examining the jewelry that Diana had left for him. The moonlight was reflected in the decoration, and the young man thought about the past and planned the future, which he would definitely spend with Diana together. The father of the bride did not want to openly conflict because it could alienate his daughter. Therefore, he continued to act cunningly, using rumors, hints, and doubts. He believed that sooner or later he would destroy everything. But now, for some reason, Lucios thought about his feelings for Diana. On the one hand, her father once deprived him of everything he owned and tried to destroy the young man's life. But the former feelings did not fade away. Before his eyes stood the image of Diana on that bright spring day. She didn't just look good, she had an inner glow that attracted people and made them admire beauty and tenderness. And although so many years have passed since that moment, the image of the character in the smallest details did not allow us to forget about the happy moments spent together. Thoughts all these 6 years did not leave the knight even on the battlefield. He did not seek revenge or retribution. Now understanding has come. They were so young and young then. Also, there is nothing in the heart to hold a grudge against a girl who simply could not stand up to society at that time. It was just ridiculous now to think back to the moment when Lady Anise had defiled him and his father. But it was too late to regret or think about something. There is still a whole life ahead, and the past is an important lesson. You can destroy everything without unnecessary stress. But to build something new and strong, and even on the old foundation, that is what it means to really understand life and become its creator and master of one's own existence. Diana's words that night broke something in him. A fracture occurred in the depths of the soul, and even now it did not give rest. Because of his true feelings and not admiration, he will remember the girl for a very long time. The girls were talking in the garden about the last ball. The case of Lady Louidan and Knight Lucius was on everyone's lips. After a long conversation with him, the girl ran away in tears, not paying attention to anyone. The interlocutor did not understand whether it was about the couple that broke up under strange circumstances 6 years ago. Another girl confirmed this. The couple talked for a long time about something on the terrace. How suddenly Diana ran away. Other gossips said that there were no real tears. Actually, that was not the point. The main thing is that the lady ran out of the terrace and ran across the hall. Some wanted to stop her, but why not? Most likely, she was trying to persuade her ex-fiancé to give her a second chance. After all, last time their conversation ended in separation. Lucius spent 6 years at the front and gained fame. He became a favorite of His Majesty the Emperor and could now demand respect from the most noble nobles and aristocrats of the empire. And many girls now had grooms in the background. But the hottest heads talked about the fact that Lucius himself was quite persistent about the former fiancée Lady Louidan. It is worth remembering their last meeting in the greenhouse that belonged to the Duke's daughter. Lucius was talking to a servant at his estate. The man asked the owner if he should stop now. When he replied that everything was going according to plan, the servant explained that he was now awaiting further orders. The knight advised not to do anything yet. It is worth keeping quiet for a while and not showing signs of interest in the further development of the plan. In any case, he was not going to give the girl to someone else. The servant did not understand his master. In this case, it is assigned the role of a simple tool. Now everything depended on his tricks and skill in weaving intrigues. The man had to beat the gossip girl. The servant himself did not hold back. He wondered if his master was even aware of what ordinary people were saying about him. Everyone was talking about the tension between Lady Diana and the knight on the terrace during the ball. Still other gossip said that Diana found Lucius in the prayer room of the temple, which the young lady visited very often. It's not worth relaxing, and you should not give reasons for conversations. But the most popular were the rumors that the relationship between the two former lovers was renewed even before Fred's death. Such conversations are most common among nobles in saloons. With each day and each hour, the list of places and what Diana and Lucius were doing in the mysterious shelters expanded and spread. From now on, the whole capital stands on its ears. Everyone only talks about the ball. But the knight thought otherwise. On the contrary, he thanked people for spreading rumors about him. But the servant was skeptical of this idea. After all matters have to be decided by him. For the last time, the man asked if his master really intended to marry Lady Diana. The young man advised not to ask this question again, because he is not going to repeat the same thing. Marriage documents are already in the duchy. But the man did not give up. He faithfully served his master all these years. And now he was also trying to persuade Lucius to abandon this idea. And the emperor himself is ready to enter the position of his favorite knight. The servant asked who is guided by rationality in such a matter as marriage. In addition, this strange couple has one past for two. A smart and wise person will not repeat the same mistake twice. Lucius replied that the events of the past were not Diana's fault. After all, she became a victim of a conspiracy, and at a young age, she succumbed to manipulation. The choice was wrong then, but now the young man is ready to forgive his beloved. But the servant did not calm down. He shouted loudly and emphasized that the girl betrayed their love that time. And as far as he knew, she never once wrote to him or visited him. The man added that only when the truth became known, the girl never informed her former lover and did not write to him, while the knight was at war and gaining military glory. But Lucius wasn't going to talk about it anymore. He no longer wanted to argue and talk about this topic with the servant. He was depressed and upset that his beloved master was not going to listen to advice. He was deep in thought, thinking about his ex-fiancée. Her image disturbed him. Charming, almost unattainable, although she was once there. He still had strong feelings for her. The servant stood quietly by the table, his eyes radiating sadness and concern. He knew his master was suffering, but he also knew this path could only lead to more pain. The servant could not remain silent. Suddenly, the girl stood up from her seat. She was decisive in her movements, and the servant was clearly afraid of her, or simply respected this girl very much. The interlocutor was ready to say her word. Lucius also felt the threat. It was Lucius's sister. The girl is the only close person who could influence him, and she knew that she came at the exact moment when her words could change the course of events. There was something deep in her gaze. But from the very beginning, the girl angrily asked if it was true what people were saying, namely about Lucius's new relationship with Lady Diana. Care, and at the same time, the inevitability of what needs to be said. The servant realized that he should get out of this office. After all, a very strong storm was about to break out between these two. Lucius felt uncomfortable when even this silent witness to the conversation left the office. The sister directly said that she and her mother did not approve of the marriage with this girl, but Lucius replied that he was well aware of his mother's decision to reject all the suitors he had chosen himself. This is an old matter. The sister looked at him, carefully studying his every gesture. She was always there for him when he was having a hard time, and she knew that his soul was on edge right now. Still, she reminded me of the past divorce and almost treason. The mother's attitude has changed a lot since then, and just now the woman gathered her thoughts. How the son is going to commit a fool again and marry the successor of the Duke of Luiden. It will be a heavy blow. But Lucius replied that the mother had since softened and changed her mind. At the same time, his mother will not forgive him for what he did, and he will never forgive, no matter how many years he asks to forgive him. The sister said that everything is in the past. She knew about loving Diana and how hard it was to let go of someone you thought was your destiny. But she also knew that Lucius was no longer the young man he had been. And Diana is no longer the same. The girl says that it is largely the fault of their father, who did not tell them anything from the very beginning. Lucius listened carefully to his sister, but did not attach importance to her words. He was going to do his thing anyway. Her words were like a gentle but firm whisper that penetrated to the very core of his pain. He looked up at her, and his eyes showed traces of weariness and confusion. But his sister is still quite young and naive. Dixie is still convinced that this is a family affair and no one else's business. But if their family had known the whole truth from the beginning, a lot of things might not have happened. Public shame could be avoided. But if it were not there, the past cannot be changed. And the worst thing is that he was actually a son conceived out of wedlock. And even if he is not guilty of anything, the situation cannot be changed in the future. He would like such an understanding about Diana. Her father had already changed his attitude when he learned of Lucio's status before His Majesty. But this is really something on the verge of fantasy. The young man told Dixie that he was trying to let go of the past. But every time he thinks it's over, his ex-lover reappears in his thoughts. If she knew how difficult it is, she would just forget. The sister understood the brother, but these feelings destroy Lucius. The love that his brother felt for her has turned into something painful, and it is draining him. And most importantly, it is no longer the kind of love that can make you happy. And this sad love filled his tanks. His own brother cannot now think soberly and take responsibility for his actions. He misunderstands everything about Lady Duiden, and how can he forget that shame? However, Lucius himself does not see things that way. He is sure that Diana has become as much a victim of the conspiracy as he himself. Nor did she know that he was his father's illegitimate son, and Anise didn't know much about Lady Bella either. And the rejection received that day is quite logical. Dixie tried to still say that her brother deserved a fresh start, someone who would appreciate him as he was now, not in his memories. There was something in these words, and Lucio sometimes agreed with his sister. That day he cried very bitterly in the library. Barely through tears, he told about the fact that Lady Diana had left him. Even Dixie was shocked by her brother's suffering. Then, as always, she knew how to touch the deepest strings of his soul. Her words were a true mirror of what he felt, but was afraid to admit. He remained silent for several minutes and thought. And now he is ready to give up his glory and dignity acquired in blood for the sake of the past. For the sake of the girl who leveled him to the ground then, and because of whom he lost everything he had, all hopes for the future. Finally, Dixie accepted that it was her brother who had been hurt, and that the apology was his business alone. But she personally believes that it would be right to end any relationship with Lady Diana. And in fact, Duchess Luiden will never be able to love him from the bottom of her heart. With this, she caught Lucius. He has long tried to find answers in his thoughts, in the words of his sister and faithful servant. Dixie stood up, turned, and left the office. On the way, she said that if her words are not important for him, then let him do as he wants. The sister is sure that only the benefit from this marriage is important for Diana. Finally, the girl came back and told her brother to think about this marriage and everything related to it as the biggest mistake he would make since going to the front. But he is old enough to decide. Lucius sighed heavily. He understood that there was some truth in his sister's words. She was right about something, but there was no chance of defeating herself. The very thought of Diana excited his blood and drove him to madness. The servant finally understood that both the master and the sister were telling the truth. He knew that this path, the path of past feelings, was futile and only brought him suffering. But it took time to accept it. The girl left the office. The servant realized that he should return for further instructions. The man asks how the conversation went. Judging by the expression on Lucius's face, it's not very pleasant. The young man himself did not want to talk about it. The sister's words sowed seeds of understanding of the situation in reality. But it is very difficult to overcome yourself. Instead, he orders to decorate the garden so that it will be festive this evening. The man does not understand the essence of the order. This garden is well cared for. He is even just now ready to receive guests under the shade of trees. But Lucius considers the current design insufficient. It is necessary to make the garden and flower garden appealing at first glance. No expense should be spared for this. Such was his will for now, and the servant had to start right away. Now it was time to meet Lady Diana. Lucius was equally looking forward to the meeting, but also dreading it. The meeting of two former lovers is filled with silence, which hides a storm of emotions. They both stood in the garden of the estate. It was quiet around. Only a light breeze played with the branches of the trees. But the tension between them felt as if the air itself had become heavier. Their every look, every movement was filled with something unspoken. The girl asked Lucius when he was going to propose. After all, she heard from her father that His Majesty insists on speeding up the marriage and the wedding ceremony. The young man is silent. He hesitates. But Diana is still talking. She does not understand why her fiancé is taking time. After all, 2 months have already passed and he hasn't done anything. She stood a little aside, looking down, collecting her thoughts. But the young man says that there is no need to rush. The decision is still up to them. Did the girl really want to marry him? After all, such persistence had not been noticed before. Diana replies that she's just tired of breaking comedy in front of people. This game is exhausting her. It is also worth speeding up the procedure and speeding up the marriage in the near future. In addition, relatives are annoying. Relatives come to visit every day, and they all talk her out of marrying Lucius. The only thing that keeps them from a direct conflict is the Duke's own interest in this marriage. Without realizing it themselves, the relatives said that there was no need to rush. After all, the marriage of the Duke's daughter is the only option to revive the glory of their house. Meanwhile, Diana is making love with a bastard. The native aunt said that the girl behaves like a real egoist. It is not good for the successors of a great and ancient family of aristocracy, which is now in a rather bad position, to do so. The girl, nervously clutching the hem of her dress, looked at her relatives who were sitting opposite, with gloomy expressions on their faces. They were always close to her, always supported and helped her, but today everything changed. It seemed that a deaf wall of silence and misunderstanding had grown between her and her relatives. The girl looked away, her heart beating faster. She knew that her relatives were right in many ways and were right about her choice. The past with her ex-lover was difficult since she rejected him and disowned him. The young man went to war and she never once remembered him. Until recently, the father did not inform about the marriage. Everyone around her thought she was crazy and out of her mind, and that's why she wanted to leave her home as soon as possible. And the only way to this was a wedding. That's why it's worth doing everything quickly. Lucius asked why everything fell on her shoulders. What does her father do? That girl emphasized that it is better for the father not to interfere in this matter. After all, the past enmity still existed. There was a pause between them. Neither he nor she knew what to say next. So much remained unsaid between them. Unfinished conversations, promises that never became reality and came to life. Diana said, breaking the silence, that her father didn't want to get involved because that would arouse suspicion. Also, he is not going to defend her in front of her relatives. The young man believed that the former was right. She dared to look up, and in her gaze there was a shadow of old feelings, a mixture of love and pain. She remembered every moment they were together, every dream they built. Now everything seemed far away. Lucius held his gaze on the girl for a moment, but she had already figured out that he wasn't interested in talking about it at all, so she should stop. After all, in this way she humiliates herself. But what was on the mind of this weirdo? It seemed that he was tormenting himself with something. Maybe it was doubt. Therefore, she openly asked how her fiancé was feeling. She had been interested in this for a long time, but now she dared to do it. Her words sounded cautious but not convincing. They both knew that true happiness had been there for them in the past when they were together, but now it was a part of something that could not be returned. Silence filled the space between them again. But it wasn't just silence. It was silence filled with 1,000 unspoken words and emotions. Their hearts beat faster despite the outward calm. The knight tried to kiss the girl. However, she did not want this. The guy laughed. He was always glad that the girl behaved like that in such cases. He would like to return to the past when everything was different. She looked up at him and their eyes met, a meeting of two worlds that had once been one, but now went their separate ways. She wanted to say something that would make this moment last forever. He nodded, but deep down he wasn't sure he really believed those words. Their meeting was a reminder that even the most wounded feelings remain alive, regardless of time and distance. Lucius pointed to a lady walking in the garden. It was Madame Chantal. Diana said she looked like a ghost. The guy was happy because he became jealous of another woman. The girl realized this late. They stood for a few more minutes in the silent understanding that this moment might be their final farewell. He took a step back as a sign that he understood her feelings, but the Duke's daughter quietly asked about marriage. Diana and her fiancé are walking along the path in the garden. The young man announces that the wedding between them will soon take place. It's just a matter of time. But the girl was interested in what his soon meant. After all, many things bored her. Lucius replied that he would not say anything specific because it would be very boring. The girl nervously ran her fingers over the hem of her dress, thinking about the conversation with her father. He was not enthusiastic about marriage. Her relatives also did not support her choice, but she was confident in her decision. It is a pity that no one knew about the real reasons for this marriage and the interest of the Duke himself in this wedding, which would save his status. Diana asked again when the wedding would take place. The groom hesitated for a moment, but his smile did not disappear. He looked at her with a spark in his eyes, and instead of giving a serious answer, he decided to turn everything into a joke. The girl has long heard rumors that her fiancé actually has an affair somewhere on the side. Even at the ball, this topic was raised. But now, such a state of affairs frightened and stressed her. I didn't want to get married and then be the laughingstock of everyone, knowing that my husband would go to someone else. The presence of a mistress will generally nullify all her efforts. Diana was upset by this fact. Now her pride was shocked. After all, Lucio's found someone better than her. The question is not even about love, but about external characteristics, which is quite important for such a young lady as she was in the past. What saddened Lady Diana even more was that her fiancé's current passion had a very good nature. Everyone around spoke about her only in a positive way, and this girl will definitely not leave her fiancé. The girl was confused for a moment, waiting for a more specific answer. Her heart began to beat a little faster. She did not like Lucius's answer. It was not the tone she wanted to hear from the young man. Lucius believed that their wedding would go nowhere, and Diana should take it easy on everything her relatives tell her. He savored these thoughts alone. So the time of the wedding was approaching. A slight sadness flashed in her eyes. She always dreamed of the day when they would be together officially, when she could show the world that he was her husband. But his words were like a cold wind that blew away those dreams. There was something frivolous about his words, and it bothered her more than she was willing to admit. She knew he didn't mind being with her, but his refusal to talk seriously about the wedding undermined her confidence. Lucius said the wedding was just a formality. Aren't feelings more important than any piece of paper? The only thing that matters is what happens later, when the parties get what they want from this marriage. The girl remembered the poor woman who asked her for help. The sufferer asked to use the power she possessed in order to heal her. This woman was Diana's mother. Her torment was unbearable. The mother constantly emphasized that her daughter gained strength only because the woman herself became closer to God. And now she does not want to help her relative get rid of bodily pain. The very requests of the woman tormented and worried the girl. Over time, it became more difficult to react to it. The mother became more and more annoying and simply tormented her daughter with her claims and impossible requests. Diana remembered how, as a child, she used to come to the patient's bedside and help her. But there was one moment that troubled her. Every time the pain passed to her. The woman knew about it, but her interest was more important than her daughter's. The girl often explained to her mother that she was in agony after each healing, but the mother did not believe. She was sure that the promises of the priests of the cult should support and reassure her daughter. And these same priests were always on the side of the Duke's wife. Diana sometimes had the impression that the worshippers had driven the poor woman to insanity, and the spiritual illness got to her more than the physical pain. The mother demanded patience from her daughter. And over time, Diana had the feeling that she was simply being manipulated and using her power for their own interests, forgetting about herself. She loved her mother more than anything in the world. From a young age, they were connected by a deep spiritual closeness, which was a source of strength. But now, when the mother was seriously ill, this closeness became a curse for her. The mother's illness was not just physical. It was a neurosis that gradually destroyed her from the inside, and the girl tried to keep everything under control. Diana's strength weakened day by day, and the girl herself suffered. She spent all her energy taking care of her mother, from preparing medicine to spending long nights listening to her slurred words during another attack. But at the same time, her own soul was crying out for help. Rumors of gossip around the Duke's family were added to everything. Maids, I am about a novel on the side. The Duke found a mistress among the ladies-in-waiting of Her Majesty the Empress, and the sick woman did not interest him, and Diana's youth passed in such a difficult situation. The girl longed for support, which she could not find. The poor woman could not express her pain to anyone because she was always the one who had to be strong. Her internal struggle was incredibly difficult. On the one hand, she felt a deep duty to her mother, a desire to help her, even if it meant sacrificing herself. On the other hand, there was a father who was indifferent to his family, and even the fate of his own daughter interested him primarily as a tool, which was to serve as a tool in the future. And the rumors became more and more difficult to accept. It was said that the Duke's mistress was specifically trying to destroy his marriage. Even at receptions, she dropped love notes. There were even suspicions that the lady-in-waiting was trying to make the gossip reach the Duke of Louisdon's sick wife, and no one dared to object to the woman because of her proximity to the Empress. Everyone who stood in the way of this woman was beset by one or another misfortune. But Diana was more worried about her own existence. Her life became a cycle of continuous care, with no right to rest or peace. When the girl left the church on Sunday morning, Lucius was waiting for her. He assured her that he well remembered her custom of visiting the shrine after the moment of her mother's death.